that dash button.
It's
Hey, here we go. Are we live? We're live. Hi, everyone. It is the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up. I am printing something, so I'm going to mute my microphone. But we were not around last week. I'm sorry. I realized that you count on us so that you can know which day it is. A number of people freaked out, like legit freaked out, that we did not have the thing last week. But of course, last week we announced Azure App Service, so I apologize very much for that. I'm sure John Galloway feels bad as well.
I actually had a few people show up at my house, and they're like, "Is the stand-up here?"
Nice.
So I give them milk and cookies, and then send them home.
Classy. But let's see what we have today. Now that we've had 2 weeks, there must be a huge amount of news. Damien.
Yes. Let's see. What have we been doing the last 2 weeks?
So basically, nothing has happened in 2 weeks. That's
nothing at all. I saw some flowers around. That's nice. The team is actually working really hard on winding down Beta 4 right now. So people who watch GitHub like a hawk will see that we've made our release branches, and then there's very little work going on in the dev branches. People are frantically testing, running through scenario verification and all that boring stuff in our release branches right now. There's then making fixes when we deem that they need to be made, which obviously means that there will be another release in the sometime in the near future. And in the meantime, personally, I've been circling back and looking at some of the localization stuff again. We've had some new APIs turn up from the .NET team for us to sort of further that story. So I'm working on the localization starter web on my GitHub repo that I shared a few meetings ago, probably a couple months ago now. I'm doing some more work on that again to try and validate some of those scenarios given the new APIs. And Lewis has been doing some work in the DNX in order to support loading culture-based resources and things like that, so that we're compatible with the existing way that .NET does that. What else is going on? Fowler had a baby, so he's not here. But he's still...
Did he name the baby DNX?
He didn't. He actually named it Kai.
And then he renamed it to DNI.
Then he renamed it to DNI. Yeah. That's the running joke. That it was named when everything was K, and now the name's obsolete.
Speaking of confusing renames, could you explain the current state of affairs? Because some of us know about the DNX thing, but others haven't updated to like daily builds and stuff, and we're waiting for the next version. Because we're kind of, wouldn't you say we're kind of in a weird middle place where you're either running CTP 6 or you're running on the bleeding edge, and you may have some issues.
Or you're broken. That's basically the two options right now. If you're using Visual Studio, you're either using CTP 6 or you're broken. So when we renamed everything since the CTP 6 release, if you're using Visual Studio, then things really just won't work for you properly. And that will obviously change once we get the new Visual Studio bits out there. So we changed KRE to XRE and then to DNX. So DNX is now the name. The biggest result of that is that the TFMs, or the target framework moniker names, changed in your project JSON file and in your NuGet packages. So under the framework section, you now list DNX 451 and DNX Core 50. And that is used to determine what assemblies in all the packages that you reference will actually get pulled in. And so because we changed those, if you don't have the right tools, then things just don't work. From the command line, KVM became DNVM, which is the tool that you use to manage the different versions of DNX that you have on your machine. And obviously we have DNX as well, which used to just be KRE at the command line, or K if you use the batch file instead of the exe. Now we just have the DNX exe, and you run that in order to run your DNX application. We also have a new library called DNU, or a new command. DNU stands for DN utility. So we have DNX, which is like .NET execution. We have DNVM, which is like .NET version manager. Then we have DNU, which is .NET utility. And the utility is all the stuff that isn't to do with execution or to do with managing the versions of .NET. So package restore is in there, bundling is in there, building the project is in there, and a whole bunch of other stuff. When the NuGet version 3 comes out, it will also have support for doing restore and those type of things. There will be symmetry between using NuGet version 3 for restore or DNU for restore. They'll effectively do the same thing because they'll be using the same code. But we have DNU, DNX, and DNVM are the 3 command lines now that you'll use. Other than that, there's been lots of really good tooling fixes coming in the last couple of weeks, which I'm really happy. I can't wait to show everyone those things. We've been looking a lot at some of sort of the death by 1,000 paper cut type stuff. Like, what does it take to debug problems? Like, if you type a package name in and maybe you get the version wrong, how long does it take you to figure out that it was the version wrong? You typed in the version incorrectly. So we've made some UI tweaks. We show warnings in more places now. We propagate package restore warnings into the error list. So if you do a build, it'll actually fail and tell you that it didn't build because we couldn't resolve this package reference. All these little improvements that we're making so that it's much quicker to determine what's actually causing an error in your application. So we're really focusing hard on that. For tag helper tooling, we're doing a similar thing. We've got colorizations working really well now. You can even bold things in the HTML editor now. That didn't work previously. You can set bolds. The tag helpers show out more clearly. By default, I think they'll be colored purple. Purple for the element names and purple for the attribute names that are lit up by tag helpers. So that's nice. So yeah, things are coming along really well. And obviously, as part of the sweep through to verify everything for beta 4, we're finding small issues and fixing them as we go.
Cool. And John,
Yes.
what do you got community-wise? I noticed that some big stuff happened today with the Visual Studio SKUs simplification.
That's the one that I didn't get, but I do have some other good ones.
I can just go, it's amazing.
Yeah, okay. Do you see my screen?
Well, I'm looking at myself right now because I want to talk about the Visual Studio SKUs because this is pretty cool. So I've always thought the Visual Studio SKUs stuff was confusing, and I've been very vocal about it. But Premium and Pro took me a while to remember which one was better, and then Ultimate. Right now, they've simplified it. They've announced the SKUs for 2015, and it's Community, Pro, and Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
Makes total sense. Why didn't we do that 214 versions ago? I have no idea. But I am.
So we don't have Smoky Bacon Edition anymore.
No, Smoky Bacon is a custom edition that only certain people can get. But I'm totally for this. So remember, you can always go to visualstudio.com/free. That's your remembering website. Oh, by the way, I launched a little mini site along with Mads Christensen, visualstudio.com/web. If you ever want to try to sell Visual Studio to people, like showing like what the webby type stuff is, check that out. Visualstudio.com/web. What do you have for me, John?
All right. So here, let me share my screen here. So the first thing I wanted to mention was the Visual Studio 2015 product lineups. No, just kidding. Okay, so we've got the .NET Conf. So we had .NET Conf was last week. Some great videos there. So those videos are live. This is a mesmerizing animated GIF also. So those videos are live. We also have those on the ASP.NET VNext page. So on this page, we put all the good, the good new things on here. So if you scroll down in here, you'll see these videos with the little video link there. So that's another way you can find those easily. Well, we're talking community and conference and stuff. Remember the .NET Fringe with an octopus attacking.
It's actually coming up in my town. I will be there. Phil Hack will be there. Glenn Block will be there. People coming from overseas will be there. Itamar will be there. Iris Clausen, Maria Nagara, a whole bunch of people. Take a look. .NET Fringe. There's still time to buy tickets. It's going to be huge, and we're going to have a giveaway. We're working right now about a possible 3D printer giveaway. So check out .NET Fringe.
And if you were worried, I was a little scared by this giant octopus attacking the city, but if you look at his eyes, those are hearts in his eyes. So he's actually hugging the city, and he's not attacking the city.
Before he crushes the city and eats it.
Yeah.
That is that is actually a famous Portland bridge right there.
Nice. Was a famous Portland. Let me see. So Shane Boyer cranking out all the great stuff. So this was actually from March 10th, but I don't think we mentioned it before. So this is using Gulp with ASP.NET 5 and Visual Studio 2015. And Damien, I know you're doing some cool stuff with Gulp as well.
Yeah, so we're in the next version, we'll be switching the default from Grunt to Gulp in the templates. It'll still be, in fact, it'll even be lighter than it was in the previous templates. It really doesn't do much by default. All it's doing is copying files from the Bower components into your root folder. In my tag helper starter web repo, I have a branch called gulp-flow, where I've been sort of fleshing that Gulp file out to do more of the type of things that we're telling people that you would use Gulp for. So it does CSS minification, JavaScript minification, bundling. It does image optimization. It does less transformations into CSS, plus the Bower file management. That also has a watch task set up that launches when you launch VS. So I'm actually trying to flesh out what a more complete Gulp file looks like. So to try and answer some of these questions around, well, how is the best way to use Gulp with an ASP.NET 5 application? So if you're interested in that, you can check out that branch on my tag helper starter web repository and look for those type of things to move into the template sometime in the future.
Great. Okay. So Mike Brind, who is always cranking out amazing things, he's been writing a lot about ASP.NET web pages. In the past, here he's written about, where's middleware gone? So how middleware relates to HTTP module. Always good stuff from him. Let me see, a nice post here from Rudenko Zek's blog, and so he's talking about local DB. So I just thought that was kind of neat. David Fowler, despite the baby having, wrote what he said was the longest Stack Overflow reply in history. And I believe it's going to like overflow the stack on IE or this is Chrome, but whatever. So I thought this was neat. He
did actually turn that into a blog post eventually too.
Excellent. He has a blog.
And
Just kidding.
That answer has driven a lot of the features that I was talking about just before regarding improving this whole debugging experience of like, why does my project not build? I thought I added all the reference correctly.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, and that's it.
Cool. So we've got a couple of questions up here we can probably quickly answer, or not answer. Is there any ETA on when the ASP.NET 5 will go to RC? That's a good question. I'm glad people are asking it. Frankly, to date, we've probably been focusing internally in the team a little bit too much on the when for the last 6 months and not the what. I'm encouraging us to pull back a little bit. From trying to really say, hey, RC is going to be at this date or that date. What I really want to make sure is that we build the best possible RC we can for all of the people out there who are waiting for it. The last thing I want to do is to drop an RC on the world and then have to change a bunch of stuff between RC and RTM, in which case, what was the point of doing an RC? In my mind, a really good RC should pretty much be done, and the only change that you see between RC and RTM will be some bugs that were fixed as a result of feedback we got from customers. Maybe it's a little bit faster, and a couple of little things like that. But we're certainly not close enough to that yet. That the next release, or possibly even the one after that, will be RC. But when we do know what that looks like, we'll be sure to communicate that. So right now, the leads across all the various teams to do with ASP.NET 5, looking at defining for them what it means for us to be done for RC. This isn't just a feature list, obviously. Like that's the easy part. It's all the other stuff. Like we need to have really good docs. We need to have great guidance for various scenarios. We need to have really good samples. We need to have performance monitoring. We need to know how telemetry is going to work in your production sites. How does it work on Linux? Like all these stuff, all the sort of stuff we've been talking about in terms of features we're going to support for the last a year and a half to 2 years, but then also adding in all the, backfilling all the guidance that's required because we're building a new framework and people are coming from one that's had 15 years to sort of bake. So no really easy answer for that yet, but we're working very hard to get close to that as quickly as we can. I can't really, what's this other one? Hello, something, Q, something, milestones, doing well.
You're saying question number 1, milestones going along well, when is CTP 7 going to hit? And then question number 2, talk about controllers that do not inherit from controller.
Okay, so first one, I got no information about dates on a CTP 7 or otherwise. There will be another Visual Studio release soon. We're locking down Beta 4 to go into that release, so you can figure it out for yourself. Question number 2, we do support Poco controllers now. You don't have to derive from the base class. Basically, if you don't derive from the base class, you're going to have to use the DI system to get in some of the things that would have been properties on the base class. And then for other aspects which aren't in DI, like the action context, you'll have to have those as properties on your controller, and you can mark those currently with the activate attribute, and the controller factory will set those for you when it news up your Poco controller. Sorry, go on.
Well, Luke's question there is why would you do that? Is it just personal preference?
Because some people don't like base classes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we wanted to make sure that in order to have a controller, it didn't mean that you had to derive from a class. The only thing that really defines a controller is that it's public. We can construct it by the factory, and we can call a method on it. And so we don't need anything special for that. It's only when you then need to be able to do other things like, well, I'm in an action method now, but I need to know something about the route data, or I need to know something about the action context that wasn't provided to me via model binding, for example. Then you'll need to start bringing in some of those other context objects to do that work. But yeah, you don't need to do any of those things if you don't want to.
Cool.
Everything? Is that everybody?
I have it.
Oh, Ricardo saying, "Where's my ultimate?" Your ultimate is now called Enterprise.
That's it.
And CodeLens moves into Pro.
Cool.
Finally.
Nice.
Trickle down.
Everybody wins. All right, magical.
Yeah.
My 3D print is coming along nicely too. Thanks for asking. Cool. I think we're all set. Everybody enjoy, and we will see you again next week. And again, remember, next week will be in the morning. And actually, I just realized something.
What's that?
No, I was thinking next week was .NET Fringe. It's the week after that. We can do the one on the 14th live from .NET Fringe.
Okay.
So that'll be cool. Let's do that.
Sweet.
All right, cool. See you later, everyone. Bye-bye. Oh, dramatic zoom out.
Oh, it's a bit stuttery today. Never mind. Not so dramatic.